Going back about a month ago when Roger Federer won in Halle at La Fedesima, we were calling it his 10th title, I did a podcast, and I saw a comment pop up recently on that podcast a month later. It was a reply to other comments from Anxious Joe, who's very anxious about Roger Federer's chances at Wimbledon, yet optimistic with the 2 seed. Miso Soup fan, who was also excited, saying if Roger Federer is near top form, he will win Wimbledon. And now this guy, Dayan. Dayan says, how did that work out for you? Never ever would I go back to an accomplishment of a player I don't like, a video celebrating their accomplishment, and then talk about their recent failure despite being so close to winning. Never ever would I rub it in and make fun of those fans. But Dayan, let me tell you how it went for us. Despite, as Tommy Haas said, the tragedy of Wimbledon slowing down grass so much that it almost plays unlike grass, like green clay, which of course I have no problem with slower courts. There's a reason why we have them. Variety is nice on this tour to see different games work out differently against different opponents, interesting matchups on different surfaces. It makes the sport fun. Despite all that, at nearly 38 years of age, Roger Federer came within 1 point of doing what no one thought he could do around the world, even Tommy Haas, who said, because of these slow courts and the higher bounce, he'll have no chance, Roger Federer, to beat Novak Djokovic in the Wimbledon final. Despite all of that, not to mention everyone else who knows anything about tennis saying pretty much the same thing, despite all of that, he came within 1 point. So if you want to dismiss that, if you want to mock the fans of that, if you want to usher in this homogenized, worldwide, medium, slow courts, every court the same around the world, then be my guest, Dayan. Let's push Roger Federer out of the way, out of the sport, despite all the good he's done to put the sport in front of more people on more TVs around the world. Let's push him out and make way for a bunch of fitness fanatics with similar games, taking advantage of similar courts with similar court speeds around the world. That sounds like that'll be really nice for the sport. So go ahead, Dayan, be my guest. Today on Coffee Break Tennis, we are fired up, baby, but don't worry, we're doing just fine. Novak Djokovic, who, full credit to him, no hate for Djokovic. He plays the way he plays, the courts are the way they are. I don't blame him. I would try my best to win it as well. All credit to him. And if you're a Raw fan or a Federer fan and you're getting real nervous as Djokovic gets closer and closer to that 18 or 20 Grand Slam tally, on today's show, we got another record, a big record that Novak Djokovic might be able to eclipse. We'll talk about that. Plus, we got 3 ATP tournaments going on right now, and Sasha Zverev, one of the top players, he's back, baby. He had a big match today, and he handled it pretty well. We'll talk about that. We'll go through the draws of the 3 tournaments, and at the end of the show, we will go through the new updated list of the 22 matches that Roger Federer lost after having match point. All that and just that on today's show. So in my hands, I have a list of number ones going back to February 2nd, 2004. Roger Federer takes the top spot and holds on to number 1 world ranking until August 17th, 2008. 237 records, the longest continuous holding of the top spot in this great sport, tennis. Done by Roger Federer, 237 weeks. That is the all-time record. But recently, I saw this on Instagram, put it on the screen, or on Twitter's, one of the two. Novak Djokovic, if you go by decade, has now eclipsed Roger Federer's record of weeks holding the number 1 position in the 2000s. I believe Roger Federer is at 260 weeks at number 1 in the 2000s. Novak Djokovic, 261 now in the 2010s. Jimmy Connors in the 70s, Lindell in the 80s, and Pete Sampras, an even better number, in the 90s. But as one person commented when I put this on Instagram, this record didn't make Pete Sampras the GOAT. Maybe at the time it did, but it sure don't today. And what matters most is our list I have below this. And we'll go right back and look at that because it's kind of interesting to see that. There's only one name besides the big 3, and that's Andy Murray on this whole thing going back to 15 years ago. Geez, more than 15 years ago now. All-time weeks at number 1, Djokovic is not there, but he's getting very close to being number 2 behind Roger Federer. That could happen pretty soon. And it's not completely unrealistic to say Novak Djokovic may have the all-time record for most weeks spent ranked number 1 sometime next year. But real quick, let's go put this on the screen. I lost the page here. I was going to show you a little bit before, like Roddick and Agassi and the one Carlos Ferrero, guys like that were on here. But let's start with Federer. Nadal takes over the spot for 46 weeks. Federer gets it back for 48. Nadal, 56 weeks. Djokovic, 53 weeks. That's why Djokovic doesn't have holding it continuously record, and he probably will never get that record. As of right now, Novak Djokovic has held the top spot for 38 weeks. So will he be able to go another 200 weeks? I don't think so. That's what it would take for Novak Djokovic to have the record of the longest continuous streak at number one. He would have to go 200 weeks from now. That's asking a lot. Now, from July 7th, 2014, all the way to November 6th, 2016, Novak Djokovic did have 122 weeks at number one. That is fourth best all-time behind Lindell, Connors, and, of course, Federer at 237. And Andy Murray took that away for 41 weeks. Aside from those 41 weeks, it's either been Roger, Rafa, or Djokovic going all the way back to February 2nd, 2004. Real dominance, right? It's pretty amazing. So credit to the big three for that. And credit for Andy Murray, the only name on this list since 2004 besides those three. So that right there deserves him a spot as Big Four. That helps justify the name Big Four when you can make the case that, oh, well, Wawrinka, he has three. Why isn't he part of the Big Four? He has 3 slams just like Murray. Don't forget the double-digit appearances in Grand Slam finals that Andy Murray has as well. But let's look at this all-time list here. At 310, Pete Sampras, 286, the career numbers, the whole career. Lindell, 270, Jimmy Connors, 268, Novak Djokovic, 261. That's his total number. So it means he's just 50 weeks, a little less than a year. Comment below, do you think Novak Djokovic can hold number one for another year? If he holds on to it for one more year, or if he loses it and gets it back, if he can get another year at number one and Federer doesn't get back to it ever again, Novak Djokovic becomes our all-time weeks spent at number one. That is a hell of a record. And if he gets, you could say if all three of these guys finish with 20 or 21 majors, something like that, 22 majors, if they were all three tied, a good tiebreaker would be time spent ranked at number one from the beginning to the end of your career. So your next question might be where I went with this information. Well, we know the rankings, but what does that break down? Novak Djokovic clearly has a massive lead. Let's just look at the rankings real quick. Novak Djokovic at 12,415 points. Nadal just under 8,000. Federer just under 7,500. Dominic Thiem goes down to 4,595. Sasha Zverev, 4,300. Tsitsipas, a little over 4,000. Nishikori, a little over 4,000. And then Karen Khachanov, got to catch him all, the Poké Master, quite a drop going down to 2,800 points. So put it on the screen. This is what makes Novak Djokovic's ranking. Of course, 1,000 points for the finals where he lost to Sasha Zverev last release at the Nito Suito ATP Benito World Tour Finals, the O2 Arena in London. And a big chunk of points, baby, a huge one. Wimbledon, 2,000. Australian Open, 2,000. US Open, 2,000. Roland Garros, 720. 1,000 points at Madrid. 1,000 points at Shanghai. 1,000 points at Cincinnati. That's coming up soon. We'll take a look at what's going to fall off soon or for the rest of the year for Djokovic. Rome, 600 for the finals. Paris, 600 for the finals. Monte Carlo, 180. And what else has Djokovic got on here? Some disappointing results. Miami, Canada, Indian Wells. Not much points there. That doesn't really matter. So here's what Djokovic has for the rest of the year. Let's go in order. Coming up soonest, 90 points in Canada. Well, that's an opportunity for Djokovic to stretch his lead out even more. Cincinnati, he wins last year against Federer in the final. 1,000 points right there. The U.S. Open, 2,000 points. Of course, we get into October. Shanghai, 1,000. Paris, 600. And the World Tour Finals, 1,000. That's in November 4th. Those two drop dates are. They both drop on the same day because you drop your points right before the World Tour Finals start. So in total, Djokovic has 5,690, let's call it 5,700 points to defend for the rest of the year. That is a lot. But let's say, God forbid, that anything were to happen to Djokovic. Let's say he got hurt or something and he couldn't play for the rest of the year. He had to shut it down, like Andy Murray when he lost the top spot. If you remember, in 2017, Andy Murray, that was pretty much when he was so injured, he had to stop playing halfway through the year or so. I'm trying to remember exactly when, but he barely could play. And he still held on to his number one ranking for quite a while. I mean, he had it for, what did we say, 40 weeks? So if Djokovic were to drop all those points, that would drop him down to 6,725, which we'd instantly have Nadal and Federer right on top. All they'd have to do is just do decent for the rest of the year. They're not defending nearly as many points. But of course, that's not going to happen. So let's say Djokovic does not have a very good rest of the season. After he won the Australian Open, he had a lot of pretty poor results. Let's say something crazy like, let's say like Indian Wells in Miami where he had bad results. Let's say Djokovic goes to Cincinnati. Let's say he skips Canada, or say he plays in both. Say he loses first, second round, and drops those points. Let's say he gets a semifinal at the U.S. Open. We'll give him one final at all those Masters that he has for the rest of the year. Say Shanghai gets to the finals and loses, or Paris again, or something like that. And then let's just throw him some random points for good measure and say he does okay at the World Tour Finals but doesn't even reach the final this year. That would be 2,000 points. That would put him at 87.25. With Nadal at 79 and Federer at 74. The only way Djokovic drops the top spot is he does not defend at U.S. Open, he does not win any of his Masters 1000s, or maybe he wins one of them, and he doesn't win the World Tour Finals. So Djokovic's got to have a pretty disappointing rest of the year. And on top of that, he still would be number one if Nadal and Federer just hold their points. Federer or Nadal, basically, you got to win the U.S. Open, or you got to go undefeated and sweep all 1,500 points at the World Tour Finals. And you got to win a Masters here and there. You got to pick up a couple Masters 1000 tournaments, or at least get to the finals at pretty much all of them. That's really the only way. If Djokovic can win the U.S. Open, he will be one major away from Nadal. He will guarantee he's going to hold on to the top ranking for a while. I mean, he could go to Australia next year, depending on how he does at the World Tour Finals, and he could lose first round at the Australian Open and still be way on top of everybody. So where does that bring me? That brings me to ask you to comment down below. What do you think of this? I know we ask this question all the time, but we'll ask it again. It looks like Novak Djokovic, if he can just keep playing near the level he's had at the majors for the rest of this year, he doesn't even have to defend his title at the Australian Open next year. He can just do okay at the Masters 1000s going to the French Open. Say he gets to the semifinals or the final and loses the Nadal next year at the French Open. He's going to take the all-time record away from Roger Federer. He will have the most weeks spent at number one. It's pretty much a lock. I think the only way this stops is if Djokovic fails to win. If he does not, let's say he wins the U.S. Open, but he does not win at the Australian Open or Wimbledon, and he has a rough run at the French Open. If he drops some serious points at the three majors going into summer next year, he would have a chance to hold on to the ranking still, but it would be tough. He'd have to do very well at all the Masters. So would that do it for you? If Djokovic is able to tie Nadal and still be a 1 or 2 away from Federer and have the most weeks, is it really the most important thing? Is only having the top slam count enough? And really, how long could that last? As a Federer fan, after seeing what Roger did at Wimbledon, I'll say it's not over. These three guys, they got enough game. I think Nadal has a chance to win a U.S. Open. I think Federer has a chance to win the U.S. Open. I think Federer has a real shot to win the Australian Open or Wimbledon next year. I don't see anyone who's going to stop him other than Djokovic and Nadal. And yet, occasionally you'll get a next-gen type guy like Tsitsipas who will have a very special performance, might be able to top Djokovic, Nadal, Federer at one of these majors. But again, it's very unlikely. It's extremely rare that we see these kind of results, like Nishikori when he beat Djokovic at the U.S. Open in, 2014, I think. One stat, though, that is interesting, I can't remember the exact stat, but going back to 2009, no one has won the U.S. Open and then come back the next year. I don't think anyone's won the U.S. Open 2 times in a row or even made the final. I believe Djokovic did it. I think he won the year before he lost to Stan Wawrinka in the U.S. Open final. That would be, Djokovic beats Federer 2015 U.S. Open final, and then he loses in the final in 2016 to Stanislav the Manislav Wawrinka. Other than that, I don't think there's any other occasion since 2008 to 2009 where the winner of the U.S. Open even makes the final, let alone wins 2 in a row. So Djokovic does have to do some new history if he's going to hang on to that top spot for sure. But as we just went through the numbers, you saw, even if he doesn't win the U.S. Open, guy's still got a great chance to hang on to the number 1 world ranking. So Federer fans, get ready for some more heartbreak and sorrow if Novak Djokovic can take that record that has been something Federer fans have pointed to for a long time to help settle the GOAT debate. Okay, Nadal's got him in the head-to-head, but nowhere near in that week spent at number 1 record, huh? That could change. Let's look at these draws. Only got a few minutes here, and then we'll get out of town. In Gstaad, in Switzerland, I believe this is the tournament where Roger Federer won a cow all those years ago. Roberto Bautista Agut will play Jaume Munara, a very good young clay court player that's coming up. Your top seeds here are Verdasco and Bautista Agut. You got Duzi Lajovic, who just came off of a big win. I believe he won in Croatia, an ATP 250. Big win for him. Moving in the right direction. Has been a player that we've enjoyed watching this year for sure. But I don't quite love these tournaments. Move on to the next one. I don't see any super interesting matchups on there. You go from grass back to clay for a week, and then you're on hard courts for the rest of the year, or indoor hard courts. I think a lot of us tend to tune out, except here we got the Hamburglar Open. This is an ATP 250, and we got Sasha Zverev, who people can't take their eyes off of the guy because everywhere he goes, it's disappointment after he finished last year on such a high note, beating Federer and Djokovic back-to-back. And Dominic Thiem is here, the Prince of Clay, Prince of Dirt. Sasha Zverev, I watched his match today. He failed to serve out the first set. I think he was serving 5-2, and he gets his serve broken. That was a really bad sign. This is against Nicholas Jari. This was a guy that Sasha Zverev really struggled in a match. When was that match? They played a couple months ago, something like that. That was a real struggle of a match where I believe Jari had match points and was not able to convert. Some crazy rallies at the end. So it's a good sign. Sasha Zverev, he gets broken serving for it the first time, but he wins the match in straight sets from there, plays pretty well. Not great on second serve. That's been his issue all year, but the first serve was so good, and the rest of his game was solid enough. So moving in the right direction. Next up, he'll get Delbonis, who barely got through Cecchinato. Both these guys are great on clay. Another tough match for Zverev. Won't be shocked at all if he loses to Delbonis, but if he can get through here, if he can win this tournament, who cares if it's clay and he's got to get ready for hard courts soon. It's going to be a good result, and the guy needs good results. He could potentially play Dominic Thiem in the final. Kasper Ruud, he got through. We'll play Mr. Rubles, Andrei Rublev, who's one of these next-gen guys we heard a lot about, and then a bunch of injury problems. So hopefully he does all right here. But one guy to watch out for in this tournament, a guy that we all enjoy watching, Jan Lennard Struff, Thiago Monteiro. Jan Lennard Struff, he destroyed the guy, looking very good in Hamburg, which of course is in Germany, where the Beatles once played. And finally, let's go to the BB&T Atlanta Open. This is right here. Hopefully, this video might be up very late because I might go tonight after my lessons if the matches go long enough and there's still stuff going on. Thanks to a friend of Crunch Time Coaching, Mark Worth, we may go out there and check out Leander Paes playing some doubles, and maybe Grigor Dimitrov. Hopefully, we'll get to catch a little bit of that tonight, assuming that these matches before them go very long. I hope they're all 3 tiebreak sets back to back to back. John Isner and Riley Opelka will play. I think that's tomorrow, and that's must-see TV. Fritzy Boy at the bottom. We'll play Dimitrov most likely tomorrow if Dimitrov can get through Kevin King tonight. Dimitrov took a wild card to play here. Interesting thing to see. You don't see a guy like Dimitrov come to Atlanta. Trust me, I live here, and we get real excited. We had Tommy Haas here a few times towards the end of his career. That was pretty exciting, but we don't get a lot of big names out here. What does that tell you about Grigor Dimitrov that he's here? I think the guy's just searching for something. Even Andre Agassi, I heard, is rumored to be here as well, helping out with Grigor. Bernie Tomic, I think, is actually playing right now. Yes, he is on the TV right behind the camera. He's down 3-0. Francis Tiafoe serving for a 4-0 lead. Bernie Tomic's struggles continue, it appears. Dirty Dan, I think, is also playing. I hope he wins. I would love to see Dirty Dan this week. We might be able to see Grigor go on a little run here. That would be really good going into hard courts where he always plays well. Grigor, of course, he won Cincinnati a few years ago. Would be nice to see him getting it going again in time for the U.S. Open. And final thing of note here, Yak Sock. He's back after, I think he had a thumb surgery after a snowboarding injury a long time ago. People ask me occasionally, what happened to Jack Sock? Well, he's back, baby. And, yeah, check that out. Okay, we got to go. Hit the music. Thank you for watching Coffee Break Tennis. We'll be back this week to talk about all the results. I'm not sure exactly what day yet, but later in the week, we'll talk about what's going on at those 3 ATP tournaments as we get ready for summer hardcourt, going to the U.S. Open. It is an exciting time. Don't have time to talk about it, but take a look at it as the music plays you out. Roger Federer in all of its glory, 22 matches with match points and not getting the win. Incredible. What a record. See ya!